Hello. Welcome to Season XV of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, we're watching movies from the 90s and talking about how they fit into the larger picture of 90s horror and how each year from that decade stacks up against the others. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to 1995. It was a good year, I'm told.
Cowboys won the Super Bowl.
That does not narrow down which year in the 90s it was as far as reference goes.
92, 93, or 5.
Yeah. Happened a lot back then. But yeah, this week we are continuing our series where we take a journey through the years of the 1990s to watch horror movies and see how they fit into the larger story of the history of horror movies. We chose 1990 because it has kind of a bad reputation of being a lot of sequels and remakes and low-budget cash grab type things that didn't have a lot of originality. And so we're going through each year of the 90s and reviewing movies that were not sequels or remakes, that we haven't talked about before, and that made less than $100 million at the box office, in the hopes that we find some real winners that we can bring to light and help the 90s stand up for itself a little bit.
I like it. Someone's got to stand up for that decade.
Who doesn't love an underdog, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So this week, I thought we could start off by talking about some of the movies that were not eligible in our list based on our criteria. So in 1995, the following movies were released, but we excluded from consideration: Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh, Carnosaur 2, Leprechaun 3, which is particularly impressive because Leprechaun 1 came out in 1993.
Yeah.
Children of the Corn 3, Urban Harvest, The Hills Have Eyes Part 3, Mind Ripper, Witchboard 3, The Possession, Witchcraft 7, Judgment Hour, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, and Village of the Damned, which was a remake of the 1960 version. We also had a few that we couldn't talk about because they made too much money and were debatably horror, but that is Congo, Seven, and Species. Yeah. Those all made more than $100 million, so they were not eligible for us to discuss as part of our 1995 evaluation.
You know what's interesting about this? We just did The Crow in 1994.
Yeah.
The guy who shot Brandon Lee accidentally, the next film he was in was Seven.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I did not realize that.
Took a year off and then he did Seven.
Wow.
Congo was a good film too. I saw that in the theaters.
Yeah. I still have never seen Species, but that came up on all the 95 lists, so now I kind of want to.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it either.
I'm just not allowed to talk about it, I guess. But yeah, this one was hard. I think this was probably the hardest year so far to find movies that fit our criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And so this week we're doing the movie Rumpelstiltskin, which I had never heard of until we started looking into this. But it's actually by the same director and writer that did Leprechaun.
Yeah.
And I had seen somewhere where it was talking about, like, just another 90s fairy tale horror movie. And I was like, well, how many of those were there?
The only one, I don't know if it was 90s, but it should just be on any list of fairy tale horrors, is Snow Beast. It's the best one out there.
Yeah, Snow Beast
is my favorite, at least.
Yeah, I did some Googling, and all I could come up with were the Leprechaun movies, Rumpelstiltskin, Snow White, A Tale of Terror, and then Sleepy Hollow, the Johnny Depp one from 99. So
there's really only three different films out there. It's just Leprechaun 1 through 10 came out in like
exactly
5
right.
years.
Yeah. It really skewed the average by having so many sequels. So anyway, that's kind of where we ended up, and I feel like this movie would have made a lot less sense if you didn't know the legend of Rumpelstiltskin, which they did not go into whatsoever, but just assumed you had the whole movie. So I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then you can give us a little backstory on the story of Rumpelstiltskin, and then we can get into the ripping off my own head to use it to bite a cop's neck details.
That's good.
In 1995, Republic Pictures brought us Rumpelstiltskin, a supernatural horror comedy written and directed by Mark Jones. This movie tells the story of the German fairy tale character of the same name, reimagined as a malevolent murderer who is reawakened in 90s Los Angeles. There, he terrorizes a recently widowed woman and her infant son. Rumpelstiltskin was made on a budget of $3 million, and it disappointed at the box office because expectations were really high, making only a little over $300,000. Most dialogue about it now is an argument about whether it's bad enough to be good or just bad. It can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video. Let me guess, you're going to tell me this one was on Pluto too.
Well, here's a real horror story for all the folks out there. It was. Both of them were. And then it was on Prime like a week after. So
I've just been pissing money away, man.
I know, man. I know. Well, I did too, because I didn't watch it then.
Yeah.
I wasted. I knew it. I should have just done it. I wasted it. It's sad.
So, what can you tell us about the legend, or fairy tale, I guess, of Rumpelstiltskin?
Well, so Rumpelstiltskin's a good man. So are you guys. Stay clean. Stay focused. That's Big Daddy. I'm sorry. Okay, so I had to do a little bit of reading about Rumpelstiltskin because the only thing I knew about Rumpelstiltskin was that it was said in the movie Big Daddy. That was it. But like, where does this guy come from? So this was collected by Brothers Grimm in 1800s. I think it was like 1812. It was in their book, Children's and Household Tales. So there are a few different versions because it's a folk tale or whatever you call it. Folklore? Fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. But the plot of Rumpelstiltskin is there's a king and he takes a young lady and basically puts her in prison in the dungeon of the castle. I just assumed it was a castle because it was 1800s. Yep. Put her in prison and said, I'm going to give you some straw. You need to spin this straw into gold. And she was like, how? That doesn't make any sense, man. He's like, figure it out. You're going to stay in here until you do, or you're going to die. This is the king, not Rumpelstiltskin.
He hadn't even entered the story yet.
Not yet, no. And so that night, she's like freaking out. She's like, what the hell is happening here? This makes zero sense. I have a spinning wheel. They want me to spin straw into gold. That doesn't make any sense. I have to have it done by the Mernin. Anyway, so this imp comes in. Not simp. Imp. I-M-P. So if you look up...
A gimp?
Nope, you're close. It's like that. Minus the G. So imp is a European mythological being similar to a fairy or demon. So an imp all of a sudden shows up, and the imp is like, hey, I can do this. I can turn that into gold. But you have to give me your glass necklace. She had a necklace that he wanted. And she's like, fuck it, let's do it, homie. And so she gives him the necklace, or, she's like, all right, get me the gold, I'll do it. So she does, so all that happens. The imp ends up doing it. She gives the necklace in return. Wake up the next morning, there's gold. King comes in. He goes, oh, that's awesome. However, I don't have enough gold now, so I want more. So I'm going to put you in another room with more straw that you have to have done again tonight, or else, guess what? You're dead. Guess who showed back up that night? the imp showed back up. So the imp shows up and he's like, I can do this again if you give me something. I don't remember what it was. The glass necklace may have actually been the second thing he asked for. I don't know. He wanted something else. And she's like, whatever, you got it. Here. He does it again. You see where this is going? Turns it into gold. She gives him in return. Awesome. The king comes back, sees all the gold because he doesn't have enough money. He's like, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to put you in with a ton of straw and a spinning wheel. You're going to do this again. If you don't do it, you're dead. If you do it, you can marry me and we can have this money. Everything's fine. Sounds like a shitty life regardless, but hey.
It's a lose-lose situation right there.
Right. And so on the third day, it's an even larger room. If, like I said, if she doesn't, she'll be killed. Imp shows back up. He's like, I can do this too. Avi, you saw me the past 2 days. I just did it. And she's like, oh, that's awesome. However, I am a prisoner. I have nothing to give. The imp said, I'll do it for you. But you have to let me take your firstborn child. So she's like, all right, bet. Whatever gets me out of this hellhole. He turns it into gold. King comes back. King's like, yo, you did it. Let's get married. Well, guess what happened? After you get married, you have a baby. The imp came back. He wanted that baby. So she ended up getting married to the king. Had a baby. Imp came. He's like, yo, that's my kid. And she's like, no, I'm not going to give it up. He's like, you bitch, is what he said in the thing. I didn't say that. And he got mad. And he's like, I'm getting that baby in 3 days unless you can come up with my name. She's like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? If you could tell me what my name is, I'll leave you alone. You keep your baby. If not, I get the baby and I take its soul. She's freaking out. What am I gonna do? She sneaks out. She finds the little hut that this old imp's living in, and the imp is hanging out around the campfire, and he's dancing like imps do, Yeah,
not classic imp dancing.
Dancing. What's he doing? He's singing. He's singing a song, and he's basically saying like, "My name is Rumpelstiltskin. I'm the greatest." In the lyrics. And she's like, I found out what his name was. So he shows back up. Guess what happens? She's like, you're not going to get it. And she's like, oh, I am. I did miss a part where she guessed a bunch of names, but it doesn't matter. She's like, oh, I am going to get it. He's like, well, all right, but what is it? She said, Rumpelstiltskin. Guess what he did? Lost his temper. Killed them all.
No.
Legit, that's one version of Rumpelstiltskin.
That's so much better than what I would have guessed.
Yes, but I think for this version that I was reading, it was basically like he was like, all right, whatever. He ran away mad and just never came back or whatever. But there's different versions out there. But that's the story. Basically, an imp helped someone out, and in return, she promised a firstborn child eventually. He came back to get it because deal's a deal. And she was like, nope. And then he very easily, he gave her like a pretty easy riddle, especially if it's going to be in your homegrown songs that you're making at your hut, out in the woods.
And singing loudly.
Yeah. Like, my name is Rumpelstiltskin. Here it is. Tonight, my plans I make. Tomorrow, the baby I take. The queen will never win the game, for Rumpelstiltskin is my name. That's what he said. He's just like, he's the worst. He's the worst person. Actually, I think he's the best bad guy. Technically, dumb as hell. But so that's the story of Rumpelstiltskin, told by a guy from Oklahoma, a billion miles away from Germany, where this originally came from.
Well, there you go. that makes a lot of the dialogue in this movie make way more sense.
I feel like I should have voiced the movie, like I should have narrated this film.
Yeah, there was just so much talk about having the right to the child and needing to get the child, and about how I spun the gold, now you give me the child, and without any of the backstory to explain, it just was kind of confusing.
Well, I mean, how could it not be? I mean, should everyone know what this fairy tale from 1812 is? Like, what are we doing here, people?
He also did not explain what he wanted to do with the child until the closing scene of the movie. So you spend this whole time knowing, like, hey, I made this deal. So you don't know if he's just like dead set on like, hey, we had a deal and I'm going to get my payment, or if like he actually needed the child for something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You know, what a movie, man.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, when I picked it out, like I knew what we were getting ourselves into.
Oh, yeah.
And it delivered. Let me ask you this question before we get into the meat of this. Which one did you like more? Leprechaun or this one?
This one.
Yeah, same. It was
actually
easily the same.
I fall, because I said in that intro kind of like offhandedly, you know, is it so bad it's good, or is it just bad? Yeah. I think it might be closer to being so bad it's good than just bad. And I think it was an infinitely more enjoyable thing to watch than Leprechaun was.
Well, and I'll tell you, this was definitely so bad it was good. And it would still be so bad it was good, but it would be even better if it didn't have that dork comedian guy.
Max.
I'm just saying, like, Max, he was that guy, terrible. Dude. Like, if it didn't have him, it's like, this is not, it's not good, but I can deal with, you know.
There was the thing that I think, like, so we talked before about how in Leprechaun it was like the bad guy always had some catchphrase to say or something. There was always like that extra dialogue in there, and it was kind of like they took what, you know, Freddy Krueger turned into and then just started with that as kind of the personality for the Leprechaun, where he's just being kind of random and like screwing with people, but it wasn't funny. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even really trying to be funny. He was just kind of like saying whatever came to mind, it seemed like, at the time. Yeah. Whereas this one actually had like jokes written for it.
That's true.
And there were times that they actually were kind of funny. Like the dialogue from the friend, I think her name was Hildy. Mm-hmm. Some of that stuff was actually pretty good, I thought. Yeah. But then I feel like we're like just the best summary of like the worst parts of this movie were towards the very end, after what should have been the most dramatic scene, you know, of the climax of the movie, where the bulldozer hits the power line and blows up and they think they finally defeated the bad guy. And then Max just goes, "Damn, you know that hurt." It's like they just had to punch up every second of every scene. It was so dumb.
Yeah. But, yeah, that was I think the dialogue gnarly in this, in just not a good way.
Yeah.
Like,
but I thought the visual effects were awesome.
It was like a made for TV, like acting.
Yes.
I don't know, you know, kind of thing. And but it was like everything I could have wished for.
Outside of that,
there was a motorcycle. I like motorcycles. There was a gnarly bad guy with crazy teeth.
Yeah.
Ugly as sin. They didn't have to. Oh, I can't say that. I don't want to go canceled. Just gnarly bad guy. Yeah, I mean, I think like legit, like the acting was obviously terrible, but like my biggest complaint, I think, with this whole film is just Mac, that character itself.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I can get around that. Like, it was just like when I realized who it was and while watching, I was just like, oh, screw this guy. But I think with me, like, well, for the record, this also had, what was his name? Mark Holton, I think, the guy from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He was in this one too. He played Ozzy in Leprechaun.
Yes.
At the beginning of this film, he was in it. And I think he was literally, like, the name of his character was Big Guy. He was the guy who got killed at the beginning. But and then I went down his, the rabbit hole, what he acted in after this. But it's weird because, like, part of me has, like, some frustration towards this movie because, like, it's just straight up a copy of of Leprechaun, in my opinion. As far as
he did it better, though. I feel like it was like,
no, for sure.
Yeah,
that's for sure. It's straight up a copy, better done. Like, the director chose not to do Leprechaun 2 so he could do this one, and it was like, oh, you must have limitations. That first one was what I thought. Yeah, definitely better done. A copy of it, though, my beef with it is just the whole, or just the originality of it. I just really wish Leprechaun came out after this one. I just don't like the fact that it came out so close to each other. But that's just personal. That's just how my brain works.
I thought basically every aspect of movie making in this one was a lot better. And I wouldn't say this was like a great movie, but I think just the overall watchability was better because the sound mix was way, way, way better. And like the sound choice and everything that went along with it. And that made a big difference. I think the visual effects in this were really good. Like, he legitimately looked scary. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there were some scenes that were less convincing than others, but for the most part, like, the visual effects in this were, I thought, really, really good for practical effects at the time. And then even just sort of the overall story arc and everything was just more engaging. And there was plenty of dumb stuff, but I think overall it was, I found myself checking to see how long was left before this movie was finally over, way less than I did in Leprechaun.
This one, there was, even though, we don't, like, I didn't know the story Rumpelstiltskin. I didn't remember the story Rumpelstiltskin going into this. I still felt like it made way more sense than what we were getting with Leprechaun. Like,
and that's what I mean. Is like, this one actually had a storyline that was sort of independent of that. Like, you could have put in random other monster and kept most of the rest of the movie the same, and the story still would have worked. Yeah,
I think that, I guess, I'm trying not to harp on the Max thing. Like, I think they overtop of the humor, but
he was distracting.
Like, and now, the cop scene getting shot at the beginning, I think that, like, gunshot wounds are a good tell of, like, what kind of effects you're gonna have. Sometimes
that's very true. Yeah.
Because, like, these shot, like, those granted, like, some of the math didn't check out. Like, if you're on your knee and you get shot with, like, a revolver, you're not gonna go flying back. That's just not that far. That's just not how physics works. But those gunshot wounds that they got, the holes that they got, man, that was gnarly. That was I don't want to say it looks real, because I don't think I've ever seen a real one, but it was just like, that was a good gunshot wound that came through, special effect. And so it was like, okay, and this is the start. So, like, I know that this scene is lame as hell. I know where we're going with it. Talking about it was a cheap like, thought of, like, what are we gonna name our son, just like, you had to make you feel bad for whatever reason, and then he's just, like, immediately killed. That kind of, I was kind of like, man, screw this film. But it redeemed itself very quickly after. I didn't know if I was gonna make it after that scene. And then what's funny about this is I only had about 30 minutes initially to watch it, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna start this. I get 30 minutes in, I'll come back. I ended up sitting and just watching the whole thing.
Nice.
Like, it's just like, I got it. I'm here. Let's just do this. Kind of. So time went by fast for me with this film.
Yeah, this one was not nearly as much of a struggle to watch as several have been this season. So that was nice. Like, it kind of feel a similar way, like with The Crow, where, it's not my favorite movie I've ever seen, but it's a movie that was enjoyable enough to watch that, I didn't regret doing it, and it seemed like the time went quickly. And I think that's really what we're going for this season.
Yeah.
We're not going for like the A+ movies that, you know, everybody knows about that are legendary from the 90s. We're looking for like other movies that came out in the 90s that are worth watching that maybe don't have as much cachet to them.
Well, the purpose of the season is to like shine light on the 90s, you know, and that's why there's those, you know, high dollar limitations and stuff on it, because we want to find the diamond in the rough, and we know that we're going to watch some rough, you know,
and boy, have we.
Yeah, and just to be like ultra clear here, what we are saying is this movie is so bad it's good. Okay. Yeah. There's a difference between this is a good movie and this movie is so bad it's good. So bad it's good. It's like, you know what? I'm gonna get drunk and throw on Rumpelstiltskin. Like that's so bad it's good. Yeah. Just being a bad film is like I'll never ever watch Under the Skin ever again. Right. You know, that's what in my opinion. But just for our listener, I want you to know that this movie is so bad it's good, and the definition of it.
Yeah. And I think that, know what you're getting into going into it, and you can enjoy it.
Which we already described the lore of Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah, you're now more qualified to watch this movie than we were, and there you go. No excuses.
Yeah, I'm saying this, and I probably shouldn't be, but if you haven't seen Rumpelstiltskin, then why are you listening to us this far into the podcast? I shouldn't say that, should I?
I think it's okay. I think it's a hard truth that people need to hear.
I think we should also we should make a note to put like a helpline that they could call to get support for whatever they're going through, if that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably good. We should probably do more of that, actually. Like, anybody that's spending much time listening to us talk about stuff is probably deranged in any number of ways.
Well, I was sitting here thinking, like, how many of our listeners, how many times do they say, hey, you should listen to this podcast, it's so horrific, and they're like, it's so bad it's good. Like that's our definition. I guarantee you that happens.
Yeah. No, that's I would be so honored.
And here's the deal. As long as we're paying every goddamn penny for this and not getting paid, we're going to put out wherever the fuck we want, listener. I'm sorry, Mark.
The thing is, we are making a thing for the people that enjoy the thing, and that list of people might just be you and me, and that's okay. You know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, what would you, like, my favorite scene was the one where he pulled off his head and bit him. Actually, let me ask you a piece. Let me ask you a part. I need a clarification on this.
Okay.
So at the end of this film, so the reason why I need clarification is because I tried to back up using Amazon Prime, and it was pissing me off because I kept missing.
Yeah, the video player is hard to work with for sure.
Yeah, and I was getting pissed off, so I kept trying to back up, and it eventually got to the point where I was like, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna ask Daniel." When we record at the end, you know, they have the bulldozer and they fill it up with wood and shit and light it on fire. What gave them that idea like 2 seconds before to do that? Was there any like epiphany?
Okay, so one of the interesting story choices was that after the dying cop gives them the key and they're able to get out of the jail cell, and they run and they like hijack that car. Yeah. The witch who owned the random antique store that sold the leprechaun egg the Rumpelstiltskin egg in the beginning was in the back seat under some blankets for some reason.
Right. Yeah.
And I believe that at that point she told them chaff and fire was the way to get rid of him. So that's what they put in the bucket of the bulldozer to then hunt him down with.
Okay, first off, thank you. Second off, that makes so much more sense because I was like, I kept backing up. I'm like, what? It's like, no, from my perspective, because I kept backing up like 10 seconds and I'm like, this had to have, like, where did this come from?
Right.
And I couldn't, and I just got frustrated. I was like, screw it, I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me now, because I just, I think I was more like, wait, how the hell did she just show
right.
And what was she hiding under the blanket? I think they would have still got
that one I can't answer. But
considering, but that was like one of the confusion pieces. The other was the fact that he was definitely called Rumpelstiltskin throughout this movie.
Oh yeah,
and the name thing was known, not.
Yeah, it definitely came up earlier in the movie, and she should have known. Yeah,
that's a bad thing. That's not good.
that's a pretty gaping plot hole. But
I mean, you could have saved a lot of trauma for that kid.
Exactly. Saved your friend, saved a lot of cops. But,
no, you just say Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah,
you're gone.
Also, is there a harder name in the history of anything we've ever watched to spell than Rumpelstiltskin?
Dude, I don't even know if I spelled it right on here. I literally winged it.
I don't know that I spelled it the same way twice anywhere in my notes.
I can tell you the first half is right, Rumpel, because every time I would search for this, like when I was reading, I would just type that piece because I was like, it's a 50-50 shot for the rest of this. I don't know.
Yeah, I have a lot of Rumple, so that's not great. Anyway, I did have a favorite scene in this one.
Oh.
And I legitimately mean that. I'm not going to make fun of it on this one.
Yeah. It's okay.
When Rumpelstiltskin invaded the police station, that felt like horror to me.
That did. Yes, it did.
Before that, it was a lot of just like dumb car chases with bad jokes and laughing at them and go-karts for some reason. But then in the police station scene, they really kicked up the violence and also used the music better and just made it this like suspenseful, almost like you can feel your stomach drop when you realize that he's going to take the baby and there's nothing they can do about it. Mm-hmm. And that, in my mind, was the best part of the movie. And I really wish they had made more of it like that, because so much of it was just like extended chase scene where you kind of knew like, eventually he's not actually going to catch them. He's going to get deterred and then find them again and chase them again. Like that was the playbook of the movie for like the first, 80%. So then at this part where it kind of felt like it was leading up to something and where the, sort of the danger of this creature was really on full display. And then, that anxiety of like being stuck in the cell and not being able to stop him and knowing that this thing you'd been avoiding the whole movie was finally starting to happen. That was like when this movie was at its absolute best. And I just wish it would have done more of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just being locked in a place that you can't get out of, like putting yourself in those shoes of
especially after it being the thing that you've spent the whole movie trying to get away from.
Yeah. And knowing like this thing can obviously like teleport and shit too, because like it did it throughout. So it's like at any moment, this is going to be, pretty crazy. I guess my only piece of advice, if you ever find yourself in that situation, is if you see someone or something get shot multiple times and it doesn't die and you have a revolver, just don't put all your bullets into them. Because if it didn't work the last 15 shots, it's not going to work for your shot either, more than likely.
Also, try yelling the name that you've known from the beginning of your encounter, and that will probably stop it.
It's just like easy. It's easy peasy. You just say Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah, you got to say it, not spell it. You got no excuse.
Yeah, but no, you're absolutely right. That was the most horrific scene in this film.
Yeah, I liked it.
I also liked when he's like, "I'm gonna get out." He's like on the go-kart, and he's like, "All right, let's haul ass," basically. And then you hear just like a little weed eater motor like start up and just as it's going, and you're like, "What? That's like a 50cc motorcycle right there, dude."
Yeah, that was not the most compelling sound effect. And also the horn on the big rig that he was driving, like really just kind of blended into the music. And so I could see in the subtitles that it was saying like honks horn, but I was like not hearing it. And so anyway.
It was all dope blacked out truck, like the cab and the trailer too.
Yeah, and it was cool.
That's actually kind of cool.
It was cool how it would randomly get cleaner between scenes too.
Yeah. He has to pick up every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like,
but he's clean.
There's no real end to like the plot holes. But I mean, this movie was not going for like a super, airtight storyline.
Right.
So.
Hey, what are the odds of the thing that could wake him up being the tear and a wish of a person? I'm sorry, dude. Like what? I love it. That's why like this. That's why it's so bad. It's good because it makes me laugh about it.
And it also almost felt a little bit like the over the top, I guess, not for kids version of Ernest Scared Stupid. There were a lot of similar vibes between the two.
Yeah, there's definitely like I felt like 100 movies out there where this is the concept in general, but what, A+ work, Rumpelstiltskin. I'm not even mad at you. Gnarly, I'll tell you the Rumpelstiltskin himself, gnarly looking, crazy, ugly as sin. I mean, come on, you can't get worse than that feller.
Yeah. Congratulations, Mark Jones. You have made your swan song.
you damn right. All around it was a fun watch, I guess. The best way to put it.
Yeah.
Better than Leprechaun.
Yes, for sure. And next week we will be back with another movie from 1995. And then we're going to talk about how that one and this one stack up against the other movies from the different years of the 90s that we've watched so far. I'm actually kind of interested to see how that goes. I feel like if the other movie's really good, I could be like, oh yeah, that and Rumpelstiltskin together, that's actually not a bad year for horror movies. But if the other movie's terrible, I'd be like, oh, okay. So
and here's the thing, Daniel, and listener, it's all on your shoulders, Daniel. Like, you're the deciding factor for 1995. That has to be awful.
Well, I am the one that has to find the other eligible movie from 1995.
My pick
that is available for streaming. Yeah, exactly. So the reason I didn't say the name of the movie is because spoiler warning. We're just assuming there's going to be one. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com or hit us up on the IG. That's what the kids call Instagram. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. You feel bad about yourself.
Sorry, Officer Small Dick. Just assuming.
Yeah.
Because I'm in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Well, about 15 minutes of this podcast is not going to be able to.
Yeah. The best parts. They never get to hear the best parts. That's what I love about this.
Fuck them.
Yeah. I also really like it when it's like so satisfying to go back and edit an episode and then take out something that's just like wildly inappropriate.
Yeah.
And then just stitch it together, but there's no way to not get like a little bit of residual laughter from one of us. So then when you go back and listen to the whole thing, it's just like, I know what was there, but no one else has any idea.
Yeah, eagle ear listeners can definitely spot.
Yeah.
We try not to edit as much as possible, but it's like, there are some times I put us in a very bad situation.
Well, there's also just times where we go off on one of our tangents that's hilarious to us, and everyone else in the world will be like, what the hell is wrong with these two people?
I know. Yeah. I know. Eventually, like if they find out who I really am, I assume they'll come for my kids. So I gotta be careful.
Yeah. People will be like mailing us brochures.
It's like, why is he talking like that? It's like, yeah, but I'm the same guy that was saying Will's on the bus 3 times on the way home from my child's daycare today.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You know, I just gotta get it out with my homies. That's
I've
all.
lost control of my damn life.
Yeah. Well, it's like, would you rather me get this shit out on a regular basis or just pin it up, hold it in until I get it, vent it with a homie that I trust? You know, that's the thing.
Yeah.
All right. Did we officially close this episode?
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay.